Welcome to BALLBUSTERS Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this, the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with all the goodness from Quantum Eraser. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a PayPal link in the info box below this video. Now, we are joined by Paula, Betty Van Velsen, Quantum Eraser, and Chocolate Saying. Very good to have you one and all. Welcome to BALLBUSTERS.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ahoy, hoy.
Hello, hello, hello. So in case the title hasn't given the game away already, we are going to be covering Gravity. I think it's called Gravity Revisited because obviously this topic is not a new topic to anybody who is in the arena of Flat Earth. So, where do we begin with the pummeling? Quantum Eraser, over to you. Or maybe not.
I think he's scared.
Sorry, sorry, I was off mute. Are we going to start right now? No chit chat?
You say this every time. Of course, we can have a little bit of chit chat. How's the weather there?
It's surprisingly cool today, partly cloudy, and I got ants everywhere. How about you?
Fantastic. Paula, how's the weather where you are?
It's actually a very nice summer day. Partly cloudy, blue skies, believe it or not. Don't see that very much anymore. So not bad.
Excellent. And the bending of a conceptual medium known as space-time, giving rise to a non-force force that you can think of as a force. Has that ever affected you in any way, shape or form? Just out of interest?
I don't think so.
Jolly good. What about you, Betty? Betty?
I'm Hudson, he's Higgs.
Yeah, well, no ants here, so...
About conceptual
Yes,
mediums that
guys.
bend? Any of those?
Any of what?
Well,
Conceptual mediums
that
bending?
conceptual bending of a medium, a conceptual medium, is happily keeping me on the floor, and I'm not floating right now. So thank you to space-time and Einstein. Peace be upon him. Thank you.
Oh my god, prayer.
Peace be upon him. Where's Anthony?
I don't know. He'll probably turn up long after the show has started. Okay,
I'm
right.
just
Let's get down to business for real. So, am I okay to stick you up and present you?
Oh man, that's too quick.
Or what do you want to talk about?
I'm not feeling it.
You need more foreplay.
I'm Hudson, he's Hicks.
Secure that shit, Hudson.
I'm just keen. I always like getting straight into the pummeling.
Yeah. If we must.
Right, let's get you up.
Uh,
Okay, yeah, you're presented. We're ready to rock and roll.
We're ready to go?
Yep.
Yeah, I always like to start with this. Well, that's not entirely true. I like to start with the pseudosciences, but we'll forego those today. We'll get back to them probably later in the week. So let's start off with the scientific method, right? From the University of Rochester Physics Labs. The scientific method distinguishes science from other forms of explanation because of its requirement of systematic experimentation. So, what this is trying to say is if you don't have this, then you don't have this. Pretty easy to understand, although most don't understand this. Scientific hypotheses, California Institute of Technology physicist Sean Carroll arguing in The Edge that hypotheses aren't simply useful tools in some potentially outmoded vision of science. They are the whole point. The whole point. It's the whole game. It's the full Monty. If you don't have hypotheses, you don't have experiments. Okay? A scientific hypothesis from Lowell C. Cambridge University. A scientific hypothesis is based on cause and effect reasoning. A scientific hypothesis does not merely state X and Y may be related, but explains why they are related. From Drexel University, the scientific method is hypothesis-driven. One makes an educated guess to explain a what? Cause and effect relationship. From Anne-Marie Helmenstein, PhD, Biomedical Sciences, a hypothesis is an educated guess based on observation. It's a prediction of cause and effect. From the Institute of Physics, when planning an investigation, students need to identify the variables that they consider significant and then select the ones they want to look at for cause and effect. If possible, any other variables that will affect the outcome of the experiment need to be kept constant during the investigation. Those three variables are the independent variable, the cause, the dependent variable, the effect, and control variables. You see how this stuff is all lining up? You know, it logically follows, it's coherent, even from their alma mater wiki. An experiment is a procedure carried out to support, refute, or validate a hypothesis. Experiments provide insight into what? Cause and effect, by demonstrating what outcome occurs when a particular factor is manipulated. Take a wild flippin' guess what that particular factor being manipulated is. That's rhetorical, by the way. So before we get into gravity, I'd like to spend a little time right here and just pulverize both of these clowns. And then later we can just throw rotten eggs at them, right? Because they're dead after this. Let's tie a bow around gravity. And as you can see, I removed Newton from here, and you're going to see why below. So both Reverend John Michel Cavendish and Einstein's disheveled monkey, and pulverize them, like I said. And here's how we're going to do it. Martin Rees, astronomer royale with cheese, esteemed British cosmologist and astrophysicist, at Princeton University, or from Princeton University Press. What causes gravity and mass? These questions still baffle all of us. Rather than the end of science being nigh, we are still near the beginning of the cosmic quest. Ooga booga booga. So, according to Professor Rees, does mass attracting mass cause gravity? Nope. According to Professor Rees above, does space-time cause gravity? Nope. What are we talking about here? It's turn out the lights, party's over. They say that, oh, you know what I mean? It's over right here, folks. These people are laughing at you. By the way, real scientific theories identified, like I said, the cause of the effect. We can see from Fat the Fat Earth and Georgie friggin' Mooser, Fat the Fat Earth says, we still don't fully know the complete cause of gravity. Georgie Mooser, oh no, not at all. Okie dokie. The general theory of relativity is a theory of gravity, right? So ballers, you have a scientific theory without a cause. I mean, it's preposterous. What more did I need to say here? This is so easy. It's spurious. It's a sham. It's a fairy tale. It's an illusion, right? What do we get? People can't. Theory of gravity. They even called the universal law of gravitation. Yeah, Newton's theory. Really, Newton's theory. The gentleman never, ever produced a scientific theory in his life. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. I really don't. So ballers, you got nothing. Alice in Wonderland has more veracity. Gravity, the 9.8 meters per second squared, is merely a description of an effect, not a cause. So remember, no causey, no sciencey. Remember from above, cause and effect hypothesis? You know, in that vein. Let's stop right there. Questions, comments?
Yeah, there is no scientific evidence of gravity. Should we start with Betty?
You want me to give it?
No, I'm not saying you should be the one to acquire the scientific evidence of gravity. No. Just merely pass comment and judgment on the fundies who believe it's so, even though there's no scientific evidence.
Yeah. Well, it's a religion. That's that's for sure. And the more you listen to it, the more it is a religion. I mean, people just pray to this big G, gravity, and all that other stuff. So, yeah, we need to repeat this every time, I think, so that it will maybe grind in some time soon, hopefully. But I doubt it.
Paula, your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I mean, if it's in effect, then no one can say that gravity does this or that something is because of gravity, like what's holding the atmosphere on because of gravity. It can't be both a cause and an effect. So what else is there to say? I mean, how do they get around that?
We'll come to the concepts and reification thereof shortly. I'm in no doubt whatsoever. Chocolate saying anything to add before we move on?
No, well, gravity is not a force, but of course you can think of it as a force.
George Musa, 2019.
That completely makes sense in the real world. You can just think of things as other things and they become those things. And yeah, that's the quote unquote science of mainstream nonsense. So yeah.
Again, I'm pretty sure we'll cover the pseudoscience aspect of it in good time. Ready to rock again? QE?
Oh, yeah. Let me know what's up.
Yeah. Ready when you are.
Yep. Newtonian gravity. We've been hearing this for how long now, right? Newton's theory of gravity. Like I said, he never had a theory on anything. So he definitely didn't have one on gravity. And what do we get? This cracks me up, and we've exposed this over the past few weeks. We ask people, so what is Newton's law of universal gravitation, right? And what do we get? This is invariably what we get. The force of gravity is big G times m1 and m2 divided by the radius squared, right? That's what we get. You got a problem here, folks. Baltards. That's not Newton's equation. This is. So I don't know where you're getting this from. Newton never calculated big G. This FG, or the force of gravity, equals big G over here. See this big G? This was calculated by C.V. Boyes. It was his little addition, which was 207 friggin' years after the Principia was published and 167 years after Newton's death. So I don't know where you're getting this big G from in Newton, right? Little necromancy or something. I don't know. You guys are conjuring this up or just parroting what you've been told, right? Unbelievable. You don't even know his friggin' equation, guys. Like I said, big G, Newton's universal law of gravitation was published in the Principia July 5th, 1687, and this was the equation like I showed above. You see big G in here, pretender clowns. Huh? Ha ha! Cavendish didn't conduct his alleged non-experiment, which should be known as the Reverend John Michel Cavendish experiment. We're going to get to that here in a second. Until 1798, right? That's 111 years after the publication of Newton's Principia and 71 years after Newton's death, right? Cavendish he didn't even calculate big G, right? Number 3, Cavendish didn't calculate G or mass. Let's take a look at this. This is Laurent Hodges, Department of Physics and Astronomy, Iowa State, right? Down here, people, you see this? Cavendish's paper did not disappoint me in this respect. There were 3 major surprises awaiting me. The first surprise, Cavendish did not determine either G or M. over. Why don't you put her in charge? He determined the average density of the Earth. Wait a second. We're going to get back to that. No, we're going to stop right here. So, Cavendish didn't calculate M. He determined the average density of the Earth. Really? How did he pull that trick? Right? Without density equals mass over volume. How did he figure out what the density of the Earth was without M or V? How did he pull that trick, folks? I want somebody to show me. I want one of these pseudoscience astrophysicists to come on here and show me how he pulled that little maneuver. Right? How did he calculate the density? I know we're getting off topic here, but this one stands out. Red flags are popping up here, folks. Third, and most surprisingly, the Cavendish experiment, like I said, Cavendish apparatus was not designed by Cavendish, but by geologist and Reverend John Michell. There it is, folks. I mean, this is over. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I really don't. They're just making stuff up from MSU. Or just, like I said, parroting the stuff which you've been told. No due diligence or scrutiny. Hearing it from somebody or going to Wiki and parroting that mindlessly. Like I said, the modern notation involving the constant G wasn't introduced until 1894 by Charles Vernon Boyce. And that's from your alma mater Wiki. So the bastardization of Newton's law, Big G, didn't make its appearance until 207 friggin' years after the Principia was published. So wait for it now. Not Newton's law. Anything with Big G in it is not Newton's law. Got it? Doubt it. Moreover, the Baltards ascribed gravity to Newton. Well, let's go over this again. I love this. And this is from Stanford. In a letter to Dr. Richard Bentley on February 25th, 1692, Isaac Newton says, "'Tis inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without mediation of something else which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact, as it must be if gravitation, in the sense of Epicurus, be essential and inherent in it. And this is one reason why I desired you would not ascribe innate gravity to me." I don't know how this could be any more clear. That gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into. Gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws, but whether this agent be material or immaterial, I have left that to the consideration of my readers. What in the world, people? Why are you ascribing gravity to Isaac Newton when he just said, I desired you would not ascribe innate gravity to me? Yeah, because he knew it was bollocks. So great an absurdity. I don't know. You guys are going to have to start defining terms again, right? Or redefining. Every one of them would not ascribe. That's a difficult one. Innate, another difficult one. Gravity to and me. You're going to have to redefine these. Absurdity, right? You guys are well aware of that. I don't know. So turn out the lights, you mindless, wiki parroting pretender clowns. You're toast. You have absolutely no frigging clue as to what you're talking about. None. Zero. That's what you get for mindlessly parroting wiki and or preach from your Baltard spitting space monkey congregation. That's what you get. This is what you're getting. I'm going to stop right there. Questions, comments?
Should we start with chocolate this time, maybe?
Age before beauty.
Hey, relax with all that. Yeah, I don't. What what do you say to this? This has been destroyed already. It's this Michelle Cavendish experiment doesn't prove anything. Gravity, even if it did, gravity's not a force. It's the bending of a concept. So whenever these guys talk about Newtonian gravity, it's like they just want to flip it and bounce it and use whatever works at whatever time. But that's not how science should work. So yeah, that's a problem.
Paula?
Yeah, I only thing I can think of to say is that here again, people who hear this will think that we're promoting Newton at all, when all we're doing is quoting the Ball Earther side, quoting their authorities that don't agree with them. And that's a point that's lost all the time on people, but that's all that's going on here. And by their own experts, their own quote unquote fathers of their philosophical viewpoint, it's not working for them. It just doesn't add up even from their own people.
Betty, anything to add?
No, the only thing that I have to add is turn out the lights, the party's over.
Fair enough. I mean, I would ask.
Uh-oh.
There was a rhetorical question in there, which is why would they being the Ball-tards, ascribe gravity to Newton? Why is it called Newtonian gravity? That's it. I know it was rhetorical, but what's the answer? I'm not asking.
There is no answer. There is no answer. He was dead, right? And he had a reputation, so they just superimpose it on him. Well, Newton said it. Newton, the greatest scientist that ever lived, he said it, right? That's all they do. It's just word games. It's nonsense. That's all I got. Turn out the lights.
Oh, yeah, back off your mic a little bit. Back off your mic. Right, let's get you back on screen.
We ready to roll again?
Indeed, we are.
We'll take a brief stop here again with Laurent Hodges from Iowa State.
I got a question, John.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's cool. So how long after they assigned Newtonian gravity to Newton did they release this quote that he has to, I forget, about how he didn't want anything to do with it, pretty much. Like, I mean, there's a big disconnect there.
Oh, somebody's got some
read
feedback.
that.
Sorry, hold
really
on.
says that I
we
want
need to
nothing
go on
do with
mute.
this.
Whoever's got their mic open, if you can just keep it closed. Sorry, Chocolate, carry on.
No, I mean, when you read that quote, he's so putting this force off, just negating the reality of it. How can it just seems to me like such a sham. Love to use that word right now, pseudo sham, that they ascribed this to him. So I mean, how did that happen, John? If you know in any way.
Well, they're relying on people's ignorance because that citation was from 1692. So they're just relying on people not looking this stuff up, I guess. That's I have no other answer than that, right? And we already know that people aren't going to look it up. They're too lazy to do their due diligence or scrutiny, correct?
Yeah, it just seems to me like absolute doublespeak that, if this is a real quote from, who we regard as Isaac Newton saying this about this force, and now we call it Newtonian gravity, or, they call it Newtonian gravity, like, it's such pseudoscience wizardry nonsense that I can't believe it's really going on. But yeah, that's a.
Yeah, they do it by fiat. There's no support. They just do it by fiat. They get a name. It's just like science, calling nonsense, pseudoscience, science, right? But you got Joe Coffey and Betty Breadmaker out there. They don't know, unless they've, been in actual scientific research. They don't know. They're just going to listen to the press or the talking heads and go on about their day making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? That's what they're hoping for. They already know that's what's going to happen. The attention span of the average person is less than a plank time. They can get away with it easy, and they've done it. I'm just exposing it.
Yeah, and that shows you how fucked the part of my language, but the educational system is, because when they're teaching you about gravity, they don't tell you at the same they don't show you this quote. They don't tell you at the same time, he didn't really, you know, favor this in any way. This was kind of just an idea. He didn't take it into reality. But I didn't hear about this quote till many, many years afterwards. So it's crazy.
It goes further than that, doesn't it? He's like, do not ascribe this to me.
Right, and they did the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's kind of why I led in with that question, although it's rhetorical. It's like, well, if somebody specifically says, I don't want to make ascribing to you, it's like they rub their hands together, whoever they may be, and go, well, that's exactly what we'll do then. It's like, you bastards. What?
Exactly.
Right. Anyway, let's get you back up on screen. Ready to go whenever you are.
Yeah, just another brief stop right here. We're back with Lauren Hodges again from Iowa State. The evidence is clear that Michel and Cavendish both deserve credit for the Cavendish experiment. That was an experiment, which should probably be referred to as the Michel-Cavendish experiment. It was Michel who thought the experiment up, including inventing the torsion balance that is at the heart of the experiment, non-experiment. It was Michel who built the original apparatus for the equipment, an apparatus clearly capable of producing the results desired. The fact that the purpose of the experiment was determine the specific gravity density, sure, of the Earth suggests that geology rather than theoretical physics was the motivation. So I just wanted to put a capper on here. That's why we call it Michel Cavendish. Non-experiment, like I said right here. That's what it should be known by.
You're going to stop there for a sec?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad. Absolutely. So, Reverend John Mitchell, Cavendish Gravity, and the emphasis, I don't know if you've highlighted this previously, but the emphasis should be on the Reverend part, right?
Yes, he was a Reverend, right?
That doesn't discredit you for being a scientist, though, necessarily. Right, John?
No, it doesn't.
No. That's not the point. The point is that this is often held up and revered by atheists.
Right.
Maybe start with...
wasn't so
welcome,
popular
by the way.
back in the old days.
Welcome, by the way, Arwen. Good to have you.
Hello.
Paula, any comments on Reverend John Mitchell / Cavendish Gravity / CV Boys?
Not really. The Reverend part, I mean, it can go both ways. Like it's mentioned about the atheists, that they claim exclusive rights to science, so-called, but that has never really been true. And they've tried to sanitize anything remotely theistic out of scientism, which only leaves them with no explanations. It's not just gravity, but origins of anything they don't have explanations for. And it's just ironic to point that out. I think it was the reason that was emphasized.
Well, and traditionally, and this is in the wider world, it's mostly been the priests in history that's actually done the real research, the real field work, what is it again? The monks' work. They actually did the handwriting early on and all that. So yeah, priests and thus religious priests have traditionally been doing the real science work. Something that atheists don't like to be remembered about.
Right.
And that goes way back. I mean, it's thousands of years
into antiquity.
The adepts and the priests who studied those things because they wanted them to predict the future for the kings and predict the outcome of battles and things like that. And of course, most of them were not exactly having any powers. Some of them actually did some kind of sorcery or whatever it was. And there's the demonic realm is real, but a lot of times they weren't. But the point being of all that is that that's where it came from. That's where studying the world came from. It came from a religious background.
Indeed.
See? You there?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that Christianity is. This is not Christianity according to me. I think it's more the Catholic Church, maybe
Yes, ma'am.
that does this,
Yep.
and so I don't think that we should mix this with Christianity or the true Christianity. So I would love to know more about that Reverend John Mitchell man, but I don't know that we will ever find out what his true beliefs were. But
Well, was he a Jesuit, for
he
example?
was a Jesuit, wasn't he?
Oh, that's very telling then.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they were the diviners, they were the heavenly diviners, basically. They built so much of the framework
Yeah.
that was later constructed for the whole heliocentric universe. So,
Of course, you have Abby Georges Lemaitre from last week, Jesuit and Catholic priest. He's the father of modern cosmology.
Yeah. So they basically infiltrated then sort of Christianity ideas and the Bible and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay. Well, good to know. Huh?
last but not least, but before we move on, Chocolate, anything to add?
Nah, not really. It's it's nonsense to me. This whole gravity thing. So I don't have much to add on that point.
Fair enough. Your backup, QE.
All right, the gravity hypothesis. Back to the Principia from Isaac Newton. I have not as yet been able to discover the reason for these properties of gravity from phenomena, and I do not feign hypotheses. Let me say that again. I do not feign hypotheses. For whatever is not deduced from the phenomena must be called a hypothesis, and hypotheses, whether metaphysical or physical, I don't know about that, or based on occult qualities or mechanical, have no place in experimental philosophy? I'm going to delve deeper into this at some point. In this philosophy, particular propositions are inferred from the phenomena and afterwards rendered general by induction. Woo-wee. That's a mouthful, boy. Induction has nothing whatsoever to do with the scientific method. We're going to go over it. I already did a small presentation on that before, but there's another presentation coming up on that here in the near future. But I digress. So he said in the Principia, I do not feign hypotheses concerning gravity. He makes no hypothesis. Why? Well, because he can't. It's nonsensical. It's not science. Back to Sean Carroll from Nature.com. For California Institute of Technology physicist Sean Carroll, arguing in The Edge, hypotheses aren't simply useful tools in some potentially outmoded vision of science. They are the whole point. So, Sean, Newton said he has no hypotheses for gravity. So, how can it be friggin' scientific then? My word. Moreover, the baller scientific community, aka pseudoscientific non-community, doesn't follow Newtonian Cavendish gravity. Back to the guy. George Musser, Scientific American. Einstein created his general theory of relativity, which provides our modern understanding of gravity with the express purpose of expunging non-locality from physics. Isaac Newton's gravity acted at a distance as if by magic, and general relativity snapped the wand in two by showing that the curvature of space-time and not an invisible force gives rise to gravitational attraction. Game, set, match, over. Gravity is not a force. Ballers, you need to turn away or call your therapist right now. From Caltech, Einstein came up with the theory of general relativity, 1915, the prototype of all modern gravitational theories. Its crucial ingredient involving a colossal intellectual jump is the concept of gravitation, not as a force, but as a manifestation of the curvature of space-time. Brian Cox, there isn't really a force of gravity at all. Georgie Musser again. Gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. From their alma mater wiki, gravity is the most accurately described by the general theory of relativity proposed by Albert Einstein in 1915, which describes gravity not as a force. From the universe today in general relativity, gravity is not a force between masses. Strictly speaking, gravity not as a force. From Phys.org, according to this theory, gravity is not a force. From New Scientist, so although Earth appears to be pulled towards the sun by gravity, there is no such force. From Phys Libre Text, the answer is that gravitation is not a force between two objects. From Physics Hypertext book, gravity isn't a force. From Joyland Bloomfield. Oh, we've just seen this one over the past week. Well, we've seen only half of it. So to summarize, general relativity says that matter bends spacetime, and the effect of that bending of spacetime is to create a generalized kind of force that acts on objects. The rest of the summary. However, it isn't a force as such that acts on objects, but rather just the object following its geodesic path through space-time. The standard from their wiki and from their alma mater, the standard model of particle physics is the theory describing 3 of the 4 known fundamental forces: the electromagnetic, weak, strong interactions, and not including the gravitational force in the universe, as well as classifying all known elementary particles. How do they know that there are 3 or 4 known fundamental forces, but the gravitational force is not part of the standard model? Can somebody explain that to me? That's rhetorical. Okay, so we've seen everyone say that gravity, whatever that is not a force. We've got 2 holdouts here. The first one is NASA, and the second one is Ducksters. Let's do NASA first. Gravity, an invisible force that pulls objects toward each other. Anything that has mass also has gravity. Objects with more mass have more gravity. Earth's gravity comes from all its mass, contradicting everything from above, the 13 citations or 14 citations above. And the second one, the last holdout, gravity is the mysterious force, boogie, that makes everything fall down, go boom, boom towards the Earth. And who's this brought to you by? Well, it comes from the Ducksters. The Ducksters, folks. Gravity is a force from the Ducksters and NASA. Bedfellows, as it were.
Does this relate to bird landing?
Only in Shangri-La can we base reality on paradoxical contradictions. We could go. Let's go and stop right there. Questions, comments?
Did you want to go first, Darwin?
Just wondering, with the whole ducks thing as a source, does this relate to the bird landing cause?
Oh, I see. The gem panda birds humping experiment is an unrelated issue to gravity.
How about supernatural bird's nest and bird's landing?
Again, the non-supernatural bird's nest is unrelated to gravity. Should we move on? Maybe start with someone else. Let's start with chocolate.
Yeah. Again, it's just I don't know where they get this from. It's not. There's no proof for any of this. It's just an effect that they've hijacked and just slapped a name on it by hijacking a word that just means weight and attributing it to this ridiculous force. It's bananas. And they've got everybody, oh, it's not a force, it's not a force. When some people say, it is a force, it is a force. Space-time. Like, what the hell is that? It's crazy.
Betty?
Yeah, I think that chocolate is correct. But with all that he said, yeah, it's just something that nature does. I mean, if we were all floating around and have no reference frame or a certain point to be on the ground, then we couldn't live. So I think that God arranged it according to some laws, like we do it in a computer game. We have set some laws for what the avatar can do within a computer game. It's just basic rules, and it's for me it's a law, in the sense of that we never can know what causes things to fall down, but it's just a law that it does. That's it, and it's hijacked. It's slapped with a term, and like perspective is also being hijacked. It's all, yeah, they make it out to be something really mysterious and mystical, but it's just the way it is. It's just what we experience, like Slick would say. Just what we would experience.
Well, we'll get to Arwen last. I've saved Arwen for last intentionally, but Paula, if you can go next.
I would just say that, when he mentioned that duck site or whatever it was, that
The Ducksters,
Duckster,
thank you.
Yeah, because people will say, "Oh, you flat earthers, you shouldn't teach children and this and that." Well, what are they teaching children? They're contradicting their own experts again, and teaching kids the things that their own experts don't believe. So who's the bigger danger?
Right on. Arwen, relative density disequilibrium, right?
Right. That seems to be the more viable thing to point at, since it does have some viable scientific evidence to back it up that anyone can test. So I'd much prefer to go that route in this discovery of how the realm really works, which that it all is a part. And gravity is definitely not a part of it. It's a mathematical construct, and it's an aberration. It's made to appear just like it would it would have to be there everywhere. And it's very easy to be tricked by this. I was tricked by this very strongly, and I was determined to find the cause, as it were. And yeah, it's not there. It's part of the aberration. So it's just better to go on another route.
World, right? It's just part of what happens in our reality, right? And they've taken that and slapped the name on it, and then said, "You see what's happening here? These are the same things that are happening up there. When we look at the lights in the sky, they're all being manipulated by the same force that's causing whatever happens here to happen here." It's literally a mind trap.
Right. Well, a bridge work at it.
But in those three words,
and find something that must be here in order for the things that they imagine how things up there work, in order for that to work. So that's the only reason it's really there. In the end, I completely agree to that. I didn't see that like a year ago, but I fully get that now.
But it was
designed
in those three words, Arwen, when you say relative density disequilibrium, therein lies the magic trick, right? There is an assertion that there's a force of down. Typically, things are in equilibrium unless there is a very specific reason or process that put them into disequilibrium. And disequilibrium doesn't necessarily result in it returning to equilibrium via down. It could be up, depending on the medium. So we have relative density disequilibrium. That is to say that typically the effect that they will measure will be when something has been taken out of equilibrium in the first instance. I pick up a brick and drop it. Why does it go down, is the question that they will phrase. Well, because you picked it up. In other words, if you ask them what happens to the brick when it's not been picked up or interfered with in any way, shape or form, it's not doing anything. There is no force of down. Anyway, can we move on any more?
If I can add a little bit to that, because our typical argument keeps on coming up in discussions, but it's really a totally different approach. It's more, that train of thought more explains where the chain of forces are coming from, because you can approach things like that. But if you're just going to isolate the actual effect of the displacement, then that's not even required. You can just see, look, there's a differential between an object and the medium it's in. It's moving now. It doesn't matter how it came there, really. It's just, how does it work? The movement starts the moment something can maneuver freely within the medium, and there is a differential between the densities. That's it. And it always works.
Very eloquently put. Right, let's move on. You're up again, Quantum Eraser.
Outstanding. So, Reverend John Michelle Cavendish, CV Boys, and Weird Al's Gravity are not the same. Number one, scientific theories, actual ones, never, ever, ever explain natural laws. You tossers, give me. I want the second law. No, see, I even screwed it up there. I want the second law of thermodynamics theory. I need an explanation of the second law of thermodynamics. It's moronic. I have to say second law because you're not going to know what it is. So give me the second law of thermodynamics theory so it can explain it to me. The law. You see how ridiculous that is, folks?
Maybe not. I know you haven't scheduled an interruption here. Laws don't go through the scientific method. Theories are the result of an application of the scientific method with an established cause being the end result. Multiples thereof can be formed to give you a scientific theory. Laws do not go through that. That's all. Sorry to interrupt.
Right.
No. Thank you. That's very important.
No
I'm
one
getting
else
an
is
echo.
no one else is cue to interrupt.
Well, yeah, I thought that laws, wherever I see laws, even for example Newton, that you pretty much put to the side, every time I see laws, it becomes apparent to me that they really come manifest as a necessity whenever you try to model something in a grander scape, and that's where these natural laws seem to then, basically become a necessary part of. That's how I see it. It's very different, really. It's more in the modeling region rather than the scientific method, which is so narrow, and it's not about that. It's much more direct. Anyway, that's it.
But natural laws are different than scientific laws, right?
No, there is no scientific law. Scientific laws is a misnomer. They just put scientific in front of it just by fiat.
Exactly my point. Like, natural laws are laws for a reason. Scientific, they just make something up, put the name on it.
Right.
That's my
okay.
point.
Before anyone else says anything else, right, I just want to put a cap on it. The only reason I interrupted was just because there was a rhetorical question that people may not know the answer to. John's asking, why would you describe it as the second law of thermodynamics theory? Correct? Well, because laws are never going to be the result of the scientific method. So you're not going to have a scientific theory at the end of a law. That's nonsensical. I just want to get this back on track without any further interruptions, though. There will be scheduled interruption points, I promise.
Yes, I was just bringing it up because that's what you hear, that Einstein's theory just explained Newton's law, which is total hogwash bollocks. So that's not, go ahead. That Newtonian gravity and Einstein gravity are mutually exclusive. Number two, like we've talked about above, Newtonian gravity is a force. Einsteinian gravity is not a force. Number three, Newtonian, the law of superposition applies. Einsteinian, the law of superposition does not apply. I'll deal with that specifically down here lower. Number four, they're not even in the same geometry, for crying out loud. Newtonian gravity is Euclidean 3 space, whereas Einsteinian gravity speaks to pseudo-Riemannian 4 space. Newtonian gravity, instantaneous actions at a distance. Einsteinian gravity, limited to the speed of light. Drunken sailors and field goal posts have more in common than Newton's and Einstein's fairy tales, folks. It's just that simple. It's preposterous. They're even connected. So, and when they do say that they're connected, Einstein's field equations reduced to Newtonian, the universal law of gravitation. Really? Show it. Pick one of the 10 equations from Einstein and show it. Step by step, show it. Right? Yeah. There'd be better chances of them resurrecting Alexander the Great's horse. It's all hogwash, folks. They're just posturing with nonsense. They're just parroting from Wiki or from their pseudoscience priest that they heard from. So why on earth are you still appealing to Newtonian? I should have took that out. I mean, Michelle Cavendish Boys gravity. All that these crayon munching Wiki parroters are doing is taking the effect. Things fall down to the ground go boom boom at 9.81 meters per second squared, which is bullshit to begin with, helium balloon, and then conclude by mere declaration gravity is the cause. It's a non sequitur fallacy on its face. They use this value and put it into the fairy tale descriptive equations and say, look, it works. Then they say, voila, gravity exists. The attribution or cause of this effect has not been identified or isolated. That means scientifically validated. It's a joke. So what do we get? This is what they say. Mass attracts mass, right? Their hypothesis, if mass, then mass attracts mass. This Mr. Magoo circle jerk of the millennium, folks. This is preposterous, right? Independent variable mass, dependent variable mass attracts mass. Clowns. Kreitzesbretes. This is your actual hypothesis. If gravity exists, then larger masses will attract smaller masses. That's what it is, but you got a problem. This is an affirming the consequent formological fallacy. It's a begging the question fallacy on nuclear steroids because you're trying to prove this. Duh. Have a nice day. And by the way, you'd fail 5th grade general science. All right, now this is one of my favorites. Please define mass. You know that words, they actually mean things. So from Anne-Marie Helmenstein, PhD, Biomedical Sciences, words have precise meanings in science. So for all you clowns that appeal to, oh, it's just semantics. Yeah. Duh. Dr. Mary Schweitzer, paleontologist, North Carolina State. Exactly. That's one of the things I drive my students crazy on. Words count. Words are important. Choose your words carefully. So let's choose our words carefully. Here we go. Mass definition number 1. Mass is both a property of a physical body and its measure of resistance to acceleration, a change in its state of motion when a net force is applied. Ruh-roh, Shaggy. Inertia is the resistance of any physical object to any change in its velocity. This includes changes to the object's speed or direction of motion. Folks, these definitions are the same, and they both come from their alma mater wiki. There is no difference in these two definitions. None. Then the Elmer Fudd sophists try and weasel their way out with velocity and acceleration. So, the velocity of an object refers to the speed in a specific direction. Velocity is nothing but the rate of change of displacement. On the other hand, acceleration is the rate of change of velocity with respect to time. So, acceleration, the units of measure are meters per second squared, and velocity, units of measure is meters per second. If you're traveling at a constant rate, you have the velocity but no acceleration. If you're traveling and your rate is changing, you have velocity and acceleration. That's lovely. But who really cares? The compelling factor in the matter is if something is accelerating, does it have motion? Yeah. If something has velocity, does it have motion? Yeah. Clowns. Definition of mass number 2. There's a problem right here, right? Why are there more than one definition of a term here? Remember, words have precise meanings in science. We're losing precision here. Yoo-hoo! From the prestigious New York University, mass is a measurement of the amount of matter something contains. Ruh-roh, Shaggy. From Chemistry World, the mole became part of the International System of Units in 1971. Currently, it is defined as the amount of substance that contains as many entities as there are in 0.012 kilograms of carbon-12. These are the same frigging definition. The amount of matter something contains and the amount of substance that contains. Same thing. Just because a mole is a specified amount of substance that contains doesn't nullify or render null the fact that each, that is, mole and per the crayon muncher's mass, are entirely based on the amount of matter or substance that contains. It's something it contains. Doesn't make a difference. By the way, from chemistry world, moreover, studies have shown that the amount of substance is often incorrectly identified with mass. Kablooey. By the way, the new definition of a mole from chemistry world contains exactly 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd elementary entities. Just to dot the I's and cross the T's. The tangled web you mindlessly parroting weaves. Okay, let's finish it off with What is Mass by Taylor Edwin and Professor John Wheeler. Nature does not offer us any concept as the amount of matter. History has struck down every proposal to define such a term. Even if we could count the number of atoms or by any other counting method try to evaluate the amount of matter, that number would not equal mass. Bye-bye now. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got one. I will also get the opinion of someone in the Discord server. We've got Gleam in there, so if he's listening, I'll come to you at the end, Gleam. But at the beginning of that little stint, you explained that often, and this happened recently with the rumpus in Flat Earth Court, or whatever it's called, on Ranty Flat Earth channel. So shout out to Ranty Flat Earth. Go and subscribe today. He had a little session with the rumpus and Sleeping Warrior. And in that back and forth, Rumpus claimed that Euclidean 3 space would divide down. I've forgotten the exact terminology used, but was translatable into pseudo-Riemannian 4 space or vice versa. It really doesn't matter. The two are in completely different geometries. But nevertheless, what you pointed out was absolutely pertinent in that moment, although it didn't actually take place. I'm not knocking Sleeping Warrior for this. It was not necessarily the right circumstances to immediately pick him up on that one point in about 20 that he spewed out. So he claimed it was just pure ignorance on Anthony's part. He wouldn't understand how the mathematics worked. But as you pointed out at Quantum Racer, ask them to show you. Oh, really? It translates, does it? Even though it's a completely different geometry. Well, then let's have a look at you doing it. Show me. Take me through it step by step. Show me how the two are translatable. They aren't. That's the main point. So while I'm saying ask them to do it, they can't do it. It's nonsense. They aren't the same. They're completely different in so many ways. But anyway, if we start with Paula, if you're there.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add for this. I mean, he's showing it there on the screen. What the problem is their circular reasoning at the very least, because, and all the other fallacies mentioned, because they can't agree on their terms, really. I mean, people will throw the terms around like they throw around gravity as a force without any real quotation or citation of authorities, their own authorities, on the subject. So what can you say about that?
Maybe we'll find out. Betty, anything?
No, nothing to add. It's we've seen it before, of course. So what's there to add?
Chocolate, anything to add?
I was gonna say it's kind of funny because I remember when I was a kid, I remember the definition of mass was something like anything that had matter in it, and then matter was described or defined as anything that contained mass. Now, I always found that a little bit weird because it was like it kind of sounds like you're saying the same thing, so I don't know why you would have two words for that. But then you get to this, and it's like they've taken this word mass that already has multiple definitions. And then those definitions are also shared with other words, right? And then you take this word mass, and then you put it into equations. I mean, I thought science was supposed to be precise, to a certain extent, at least, right? So how... like, it's so weird to see that it's got all these definitions shared with other words. How are you precise on any of this?
Yeah, choose your words carefully, unless you're making stuff up, and then make sure your words have many meanings, and you can equivocate much easier that way when someone picks apart your nonsense. Arwin?
Well, for me, yeah, it's a difficult question. I didn't even realize there was such an issue about it, that it has difficulty to be specifically found on the internet. But to me, mass has always simply been one of two differentials. There's volume and there's mass, and they're always entangled with one another. And a lot can be defined through the relation of those two, as it were. By the way, including relative density. But yeah, it's part of one system of volume and mass to be. When
What's
there's
mass?
one, there's always going to be the other one at some point.
What's mass?
I was just thinking that.
That which opposes volume.
And when you get that, when you understand that, it makes so much more sense when John says, define mass. It's like, okay, so you want me to sit here for 5 minutes and define this?
Hold on.
Because it's got all these definitions.
If I was saying the amount of stuff in a volume, that's mole.
No, but mole is a specific numerical amount.
Doesn't matter. You didn't listen to my presentation.
Maybe not
Yeah,
good enough.
You didn't listen to how I just defined it. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. But
I don't know. I
thought mole
just
was substance.
It is.
Don't you have to use the word substance for
accept
mole?
our word for it. Hold on, chocolate.
I
hold on.
just gave my understanding of it, how I've regarded and dealt with it all my life.
You're not wrong. You're not
It's never
wrong.
been that specific, really, to me.
Sure. You're not wrong. But that is how it's defined. But that's the point. So you've also
Okay.
got another definition, which is inertia. But in this instance, you've got a definition which conforms to mole. And I know you're saying, well, no, because that's a specific amount. But given that that's how it's defining the amount in the measure, that is still mole.
Right. Okay.
Now, I don't know if you can hear us or not. Can you hear us, Gleam? You may not have anything to add on this particular subject. I just wanted to introduce him into the conversation. If you do have a gateway into Discord, there is no public link, but if you are part of the Science versus Pseudoscience Discord server, there will be a debate after the live show is finished. So we may even, if we've got time, introduce some of their opinions, but it seems Gleam can't hear us. I'll give him one more try. Can you hear us, Gleam? If you want to pipe up and offer an opinion on this, feel free. Not, we'll move on. No, he's not around. No worries. Right, moving on.
Well, this is, before I move on, it's just shape-shifting via linguistics to use mass, because it's everywhere, right? So it'll shape-shift into whatever their argument is, right? They'll just make it that. And then for the next argument, it'll shape-shift again. So it's just a linguistics game. It's linguistic acrobatics. That's all. So it's really kind of juvenile. So we're going to get to Newton train wreck. Listen, like I said, I didn't ascribe gravity to Newton. I have nothing against Newton with gravity. Nothing. Zero. So this beating is coming from everything other than gravity. All right? Just so that's clear.
It's not.
So,
sorry, you'll have to say that again, because that was not clear.
It wasn't clear?
You're saying it's everything but gravity? It made sense until you said that.
Yeah, I didn't take him to the woodshed regarding gravity because he said not to ascribe gravity to him, so I'm not going to do it. The gravity pummeling above was mainly towards Cavendish and C.V. Boyes and a little bit of Einstein. We're going to get into that a little further down here. But this particular subject, right, I'm going to take Newton to the woodshed right here, but this has nothing to do with gravity because he said not to ascribe it to him.
Fine, so this is a different pummeling of Newton. That makes sense now. Thank you. Feel free to continue.
Thank you. So, from Professor Shankar, Chair of Physics at Yale, listen to this carefully. The laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. You don't have separate laws for big and small things. I'm going to say this one more time. The laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. You don't have separate laws for big and small things. Okay? Now, what do you always hear? Well, that quantum mechanics only applies to small things, right? Yeah. Unbelievable. All right, listen closely. Let me pull this up. From Richard Feynman, Discovery of Quantum Mechanics First, and then in the Behavior of Light, and then in the Behavior of Matter, finally culminating in 1926 with a full equation of quantum mechanics, which told us that the laws of motion of Newton were not right. Say it again. The laws of motion of Newton were not right. From the chair of physics at Yale again. All right, so today we're going to shoot down Newtonian mechanics and Maxwell's theory. We're like the press. We build somebody up only to destroy them. Again, from Professor Shankar. First, I want to tell you what goes wrong with Newtonian mechanics. The double slit experiment is a problem. That's what puts the nail in the coffin for Newtonian physics. So, all those are all well and good. They are citations. However, even though they're from the professor of physics at Yale, the chair of physics at Yale, and Richard Feynman, they are still baseless assertion fallacies on their face until we get cowbell. And here comes that cowbell. Ready, clowns? So we have a double slit experiment with a Newtonian particle and electron. We close one slit and fire a bevy of electrons and we get 10 hits of point A. We close that slit and open the other slit and fire a bevy of electrons and we get 8 hits of point A. The Newtonian prediction would be if we fired the same bevy of electrons with both slits open, we must get 18 hits at point A. Well, what do we get? We get a big fat 0. And what does that mean? Well, tell him, Professor Shankar, that is the end of Newtonian physics. Let me say that again. That is the end of Newtonian physics. So, in relation to Newtonian classical mechanics, we have shoot down, the nail in the coffin, destroy, that is the end of, and the laws of motion of Newton were not right. Baltards, what is particularly confusing about this? Okay? Have a nice day on Newton. The mindless retort, and I spoke about it above just briefly, quantum mechanics doesn't apply to big things, QE. We've all heard this before. If you haven't heard it, you read it somewhere, right? Let me say this again. The laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. You don't have separate laws for big and small things. That takes care of that little maneuver right there. We'll just pile on. From Lapquic's Experimental Non-Classicality of an Indivisible Quantum System from Nature. Our results illustrate a deep incompatibility between quantum mechanics and classical physics that cannot in any way result from entanglement. From the Bulletin of the American Physical Society. Listen to this carefully. Late last year, Bruckner and Koffler demonstrated that it does not matter how many particles are around or how large an object is, quantum mechanics always holds true. The reason, here's the important part, the reason we see our world as we do is because of what we use to observe it. The human body is just barely adequate measuring device. Quantum mechanics does not always wash itself out, but to observe its effects for larger and larger objects, we would need more and more accurate measuring devices. We just do not have the sensitivity to observe the quantum effects around us. And the current record holder for quantum interference from Ibenberg and Gerlich. Matter wave interference with particles selected from molecular library with masses exceeding 10,000 atomic mass units. We're well beyond single photons and electrons here, folks. This is, it's gigantic. And this, I like this one. from O'Connell, AD, quantum ground state and single phonon control of a mechanical resonator from Nature. A metal paddle, 30 micrometers long, that's trillions of atoms. A team of scientists has succeeded in putting an object large enough to be visible to the naked eye into a mixed quantum state of moving and not moving. He shows it on here too, on a TED Talk. I got the, if you guys want this, I can maybe give it to you or put it in the video after. It's pretty cool. So, goodbye, Newton. Sing it with me now. Ready? Turn out the lights.
The party's over.
They say that all.
Oh, good things must end.
You got it? All right. P.S. I got one little tidbit left for Newton.
I think that we should rehearse.
Hold on a second.
No rumpusing.
We should rehearse this song
rumpusing.
a little bit better. That's what I want to say.
No rumpusing. All right. Just one last one. And this is over at Caltech. Einstein also replaced the Newtonian law of motion by the statement that free test particles move along geodesics, the shortest curves in space-time geometry. Professor Jacob Bekenstein. Replaced. Einstein replaced, right? I don't know what he's talking, Newtonian law of motion. Isn't there 3 laws of motion, Jacob? I don't know what you're talking about here. You might want to be more specific, but we get the gist. Okay, here we go again. Turn out the lights. Party's over.
Right,
They say it all.
Can I minimize you?
It must end. Call it a night. The party's over.
Oh my god.
That's not thanks for your ear, though, right? There is a bit more.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, but there's more to come after that, right? I just don't want to open the Discord server prematurely.
Oh yeah. We're gonna take a couple free shots at Einstein. Yes.
Perfect. I'll just make the audience aware. So if you are already a member of the Discord server, a few people have asked me in chat, then you can join. There is no public link, but you can if you are already a member of the Discord server. So science versus pseudoscience. If you're a member, you can join. We will open the mics to people slightly later. Right. Let's start with Arwin.
I dropped the Discord link in the.
There is a Discord link. Okay, yeah. Apparently, there's a link in the info box. So if you do want to join, there is a public link apparently. So feel free. Right, Arwin, we'll start with you.
Wait, what?
Just
Sorry.
Were you paying attention?
I was very preoccupied with chat, which was getting very silly.
Your multitasking skills aren't up to par. Maybe we'll start with someone else. Chocolate, how you doing?
Yeah. I was kind of doing the same thing.
But, oh god, we got nothing but ballbusters in the chat. Paula, we'll see if anybody's been paying attention. I was paying attention to the presentation.
I actually did, listen, and is basically saying once again that you can't reduce one to the other between Einstein and Newton/Cavendish, whoever, because they're totally incompatible, and they can't both be true, and one can't lead to the other or be approximated by the other. I mean, how many quotes do you need to say that? But there it is. I mean, they can't say we've, not given enough of a basis for the claim. That's for sure.
Anything to add, Betty?
No, I have nothing to add. Only that George is in the Discord server, and he really would like to challenge QE on the quote that Professor Shankar made. So,
why?
I don't know.
George, the Pontiff Maximus of Retardia. Why does he want to talk to me? Go on Jose's show and talk to those retards over there. You've been exposed more than friggin' Mae West.
Well, that said, you won't get your opportunity immediately, George, but the mics will be opened once the presentation is over if you do want to hang around. Anybody who joins will get this. It's tough luck.
It'd be like explaining trig to a 3-month-old.
We'll get into that later. Let's not chew out time. Right, do you want to carry on? Or is there anything else anybody wants to add before I put your screen back up? No?
Good.
Right,
Nope.
Moving on.
All right, before we move on to Einstein, I'd like to clarify. I don't know why I need to, but I've heard just a couple little whispers in the back channels, stating that we, as in on Nathan's channel, support Einstein, that we are relativists. I don't know where you got this from. Listen, people, the only reason why we're taking Newton to the woodshed in this particular sense, not in the gravity sense, the only reason we're doing that is to force the ball-tards to parrot the right pseudoscience, because they're not parroting the right pseudoscience. They even got that wrong. And when they start parroting the right pseudoscience, we're going to beat that over the head with a 44-inch nail spike Louisville Slugger. Is there any questions on that? I'm going to go over a little bit right here coming up. But hopefully that clarifies maybe some confusion. Nathan, do you have anything to say on that?
No, not particularly. Well, maybe somebody else has, though. Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. I've been trying to say it for a long time. It's all just evading actually getting the proof for gravity. The search goes on. That's basically what's happening out there right now still. They're still basically looking for it. It's ridiculous. They just assume it has to be there and they're still looking for it. And they migrated from a very feeble pseudoscientific setup in the early days with Newton. We didn't actually agree with it too much in Cavendish, and then moved on into a completely mathematical, conceptual realm with Einstein, and they're still trying to migrate back somehow. That's, in my opinion, the situation.
By they, you mean the fundies, though, right?
Well, yeah, and also, universities and physics departments, and a lot of people are occupied with this.
You definitely didn't watch the quotes roll by. You were paying far too much attention to the chat.
Yes, that's true.
No worries. Maybe watch the show back. The universities definitely, no, I'm afraid not. They're not trying to migrate back. I mean, this is 100 years ago that this changed in the modern fairy tale. But ultimately speaking, I almost stopped you, John.
Aren't
when
they
you
working
said,
on all
hold on
those
one second,
string
Arwen.
theories and all that?
Just 1 second. I almost stopped you when you said Newton and Einstein's fairy tales, and I thought, should I highlight this, that you're pummeling both? Because that also came up on the Ranty Flat Earth show with the Rumpus and Sleeping Warrior, where he's being questioned in regards to whether or not he's actually attacking both. Now, in that particular instance, Anthony, Sleeping Warrior, is just trying to tie the Rumpus to his contradictions with the two different versions of gravity, as opposed to say, I'm pummeling both. Whereas I can't think of a single instance where we haven't drawn, you or I, that is, or made it absolutely clear that we, in no way whatsoever, endorse Einstein's nonsense of gravity. Mm-hmm. It's fairy tale. It's bending of a conceptual medium. We make that really, really, really clear.
Well, what you were practically doing with constantly referring back from Newtonian gravity to Einsteinian gravity within the debates, this is what I've seen, what you were practically doing is forcing the Globers up the stairs to get deeper into it and to look what their body of science is actually telling them. So and it has accomplished that. They know, most of them know a lot more about it now that are actually kind of smart. And they try to jumble around and do all kinds of magician tricks and doublespeak, but they have moved up that staircase and actually learned more about it because of that process.
Just so everyone else on the panel's had an opportunity, I mean, this is a stupid question. Does anybody else actually endorse Einstein? I mean, don't get me wrong, he's got some scientific validity to some of the things he actually asserts. He has actually done experiments. But this instance is specifically in regards to gravity. Does anybody endorse Einsteinian gravity? Are we all aware that it's a fairy tale? It's a stupid question.
I don't think he ever...
Not you. Hold on, Arwen. Everyone else.
He never migrated.
Arwen. Other people want to talk. Arwen. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else other than Arwen, who's just spoke for the last 3 minutes?
I was just going to say, I mean, what the hell is space-time supposed to be? Right? In reality, if I pick something up and drop it, what is space-time and how is it affecting what I just did? That's what I want to know. Where is the experiment that proves that some bending of a conceptual medium is what is causing something that I dropped myself fall to the floor? It's nonsense.
Did you drop a helium balloon? No, I'm only kidding. Moving on.
Nah.
Betty? Betty?
No, not much to. I was also busy with chats and with George and with other people. Sorry.
Right, I'm taking chat off all of you. Paula? You can't be trusted.
No. It's the same problem again that Chocolate brought out about the conceptual medium. I mean, space-time is totally made up. Space and time are immaterial things. So they can't do anything. Unless they want to start admitting that it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Not pseudoscience. I just lost the term. I can't think of it, but...
Conceptual?
I'm sorry?
Conceptual?
Well, not just conceptual, but mystical. I can't think of the right word. I don't
Philosophical?
know.
Metaphysical?
Metaphysical, that's it, thanks. That's what it is. It's metaphysics.
Right. It's not causing anything. Okay. Should we move on?
I just want, like I said, I just wanted to point out that there was there may have been some confusion or misconceptions. We're just trying to get the ballers to parrot the right pseudoscience. Okay?
Right. Okay.
We're going to go to Einstein here. I shortened this part of the presentation because I didn't think it needed to be longer. You're going to get the gist relatively quickly, so let's go through it. So Einstein. So relativity, special relativity and general relativity via different mechanisms, speed versus gravity, can dilate, bend, or warp time? Really? Primary school falsification. Time is a conceptual relationship between two motions. Specifically, it is based on an alleged single rotation of the Earth on its axis in respect to the sun. A day. It's a concept, people, non-physical. It is without chemical formula or structure, charge, mass, momentum, or spin. No milli-electron volts, kcals, or kilojoules. No dimensionality or orthogonality. No direction or location. You can't put time in a jar and paint it red. I mean, come on now, let's reason together. Can you dilate, bend, or warp non-physical concepts? Is it your contention that if you have poison ivy on the brain, you could scratch it by thinking of sandpaper? Freedom is a concept also. Can you bend that? That which you are using to measure isn't the thing you're measuring. A football field is 100 yards long, but a football field isn't yardsticks. If I bend a yardstick, does the football field bend also? So if something affects, say, cesium atomic clocks or any modern clock for that matter, does that then ipso facto mean that the Earth's alleged rotation in relation to the sun is affected? These two mytho-mathematical fairy tales, special relativity and general relativity, were falsified 30 seconds after their respective publications by third graders at recess. For goodness sakes! In toto, each are massive reification fallacies on nuclear steroids. I'm stopping right there before I get to quantum mechanics. I want to stop right there to see if everyone understands this well-doubt point. Comments, questions?
Yeah, I like the word mythomagical. Anyway, Paula, start with you maybe.
It's pretty much what I just said a few minutes ago. It's the time and space are immaterial and you can't bend them. And people in the chat are trying to insist that yes, you can. But the examples that John just gave there say no, you can't. So what else is there to say? I mean, it's impossible. It's a reification fallacy to make something immaterial like time be a cause of something. It's simply a concept and something we observe a sequence of. So that's all it can be. It's a phenomenon. It's a observation. It's a concept. It's nothing you can manipulate. It can't be any kind of variable.
Unless you're Doc Brown.
I was going to say
1.21 gigawatts.
I'm going to parrot something a bit more appropriate, which is to say that time is these are quantum erasers words. So time is the conceptual medium in which all things take place, in which we call the universe, in the medium which we call the universe. So it's a conceptual medium. But the way around that, Paula, is to say, show me. All right, you can bend time, space-time, can you? Do you want to show me that? Let's have a little look at you bending space-time. Go ahead.
Yeah, what they do is, I mean, this weeks ago in a chat, somebody was doing the same thing where they would say, well, the car moving at a certain speed on the highway proves that time is a variable. I don't know how I tried to untangle that knot, but the problem is that they don't understand that time is just our perception of the car who is not being caused to move by time, but caused to move by the mechanics of the car plus fuel plus the gas pedal and all these things, that those are the causes of the car moving. It has nothing to do with time. And they just can't extract time from that and say that, well, there's some other cause. It's not the time. Time doesn't cause anything. But I have never seen a way to explain it to somebody who believes it is.
Well, in some instances, they assert that time is the independent variable of all independent variables. In other words, time does cause all things. But obviously, if you're going through the method of science, you're establishing the independent variable, that which you presume causes the effect that you've observed. Well, if time is the only independent variable, then time is the cause of all things, and there is no actual point in putting anything through the method ever, because you've always got the cause. What's that you say? You've got cancer. I've got the cause of that. That'd be time. What's that you say? Your garden's not growing very well. Time. That's the cause. In other words,
herpes.
Whatever you've got as an effect, you can always describe time as the bloody cause of it. A concept? No. It's just silly. Betty?
Right. And
sorry,
I was just going to add that the car on the highway, if you leave it sitting still and don't start it, don't put gas in it, time won't make it go. And that should make it clear, but it doesn't.
Yeah, petrol and a foot on the gas pedal with a working engine. Anyway.
But the same way you could just as well attribute it to entropy.
I was going to add that, but that may come up in the presentation, so I held off on that one, Arwin. But yes, you're right. Even though you're not moving anywhere, entropy is still directly proportional to time. Anyway, we'll maybe come to that. We'll go with you next, Betty. I will come back to you, Arwin.
All right.
Yeah, what's more to add with this, huh? This, if you think that it's something that you can bend, I think that is more a belief than believe in God, because God you can prove basically through nature and things having a design and stuff. But time, yeah.
I have something to add, though.
I will come
Okay.
to you.
I'm trying for some time.
I'll come to you last, though. Chocolate, anything?
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of hilarious how they say that time can be an independent variable, and I've seen some of these globers running around with the same I don't know how many, but I've seen one citation that does say time can be an independent variable, but it's like, okay, even if you've got that citation, can you back that up? Like, how can you make time an independent variable? How can you manipulate that? But once you could show me how you can do that, then yeah, maybe we could talk. But time doesn't cause anything. And until it can, I don't know how it's going to be a variable of any sort. Maybe a constant somehow, but can't manipulate time.
Say it with me. 1.21 gigawatts.
Mr. Fusion.
Right. Arwin?
Yeah. I'm just wondering about the whole concept, the bending of space-time, okay? So what is claimed in a more earthly sense is basically something that causes displacement that could be considered a force. So where does, the bending of either space or time or somewhere in between actually arise to some kind of force in any way? What even is bending of space-time? What is bending? And how does it arise to some kind of force? I don't
if
even
it's not bending?
understand.
What if
I
it's
don't
straight?
even understand the claim fully, pretty much. That's the thing about it. That's really mystified me the most.
You butchered that on the debate the other day, and we almost ended up in a row. But now you phrase it like that, I don't understand the claim. Now that makes a whole lot more sense. Right, you don't get what they're even claiming.
Yes.
That makes a lot more sense, Alvin.
Where does the force actually come into being within the concept?
Hold on, let's just correct that bit though. There is no force, so it's not going to give rise to a force because gravity isn't a force. George Musa, 2019.
Then what is it? What is actually happening?
It's a non-force force that you can think of as a force
that goes to my
manifests as a
question.
But
force
what
that's
is
not a
actually
force.
happening because of the bending of space-time then?
Nothing happens. Generally, we've got equilibrium, unless something's maybe grown like an apple into disequilibrium and then some wind comes along. Or a helium balloon going in the opposite direction. There's all sorts of things that happen that start with something in equilibrium and then it moves out of equilibrium. But you have no necessity to explain that which wants to return to equilibrium. There's no necessity at all. Asserting that we have 1G when nothing's happening, it's just ludicrous.
So what happens when a helium balloon goes up? Does the space-time bend in the opposite direction? Is that how that works?
Could be.
I don't know how it relates to anything since there's no force in it.
I know, Arwen. I know. I get it.
I'm still puzzled about that.
No. Your question makes a lot more sense now. You don't get the claim. You don't actually understand what they're claiming happens, and that now you say it in that way, that makes more sense. Okay. Have we got any more for any more? Did I miss anybody, by the way? I don't think I did I? Did I miss you, Betty? No, you just didn't have anything on this occasion. Okay, I've got you presented again, QE.
Yeah, it is. But after number one, the primary school falsification, I really don't need to do this, but I will. The grown-up falsification, quantum mechanics, non-locality, brief synopsis here. Non-locality occurs due to the phenomenon of entanglement, whereby particles that interact with each other become permanently correlated or dependent on each other's states and properties to the extent that they effectively lose their individuality and in many ways behave as a single entity. Because of this well-established phenomena in 1935, which pummeled Einstein's fairy tales, GR and SR, he coined the phrase spooky action at a distance, and then he and his buddies conjured a thought experiment. It's called the EPR paradox. Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, in a clumsy, feeble attempt to debunk quantum mechanics. Why? Well, he couldn't have anything traveling faster than the speed of light because his theories would implode. Side note, he never published in physical review letters again because he didn't appreciate the paper being peer-reviewed. The pretentious, pompous, pseudoscientific... Because of the seemingly impossibility of testing his thought experiment, it apparently covered this pretentious, pompous, pseudoscience, mytho-mathematical philosopher's butt, and the very public argument between he and Niels Bohr, who was of the opposite position, was relegated to the dustbin of history, never to be reconciled. But wait! But then... In the 1960s, John Bell explored Einstein's alleged paradoxical thought experiment and proposed an inequality called Bell's inequality. If it was shown to be false, Einstein and his theories would take a dirt nap. Then John Clauser, a frustrated grad student because of his poor grades in quantum mechanics, was rustling through some books and papers in the campus library when he came across John Bell's paper. And that, as they say, folks, is history. Bell's inequality was first violated experimentally in 1972 by John Clauser and Stuart Friedman. Then in 1982, physicist Alain Aspect experimentally jacked it yard forever. Ergo, Einstein and his theories, they equal a dirt nap. He got debunked. Ever since Aspect's falsification, non-locality has been confirmed by experiment over 3,000 times. Without exception. From David Bohm, renowned professor of physics and Einstein's personal friend. One could see that relativity and quantum mechanics, the two most fundamental theories of matter, really directly contradict each other. in the sense that relativity is local, it's causal, it's determined, it's continuous. And quantum mechanics is just the opposite. In the appropriately named, from Caltech, the final contradiction. General relativity and quantum field theory are incompatible. Why do I get people trying to friggin' plaster these two together? Quantum mechanics and relativity. Why is that? Are these Ken Wheeler tattooed Jabba the Hutt junkies? This is inane. They are directly incompatible. Everyone knows this, so I don't know where you're coming up with this. Don't even speak of them in the same sentence. If I catch you, I'm going to rip you up. And remember, the laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. So, if the laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws, and Einstein's fairy tales stand in direct contradiction to them, then where does that leave Einstein's fairy tales? Por favor. In this one. I don't know if people appreciate the gravity of the situation here. There are no known solutions for any of Einstein's field equations for two or more masses, people. This is known. I mean, this isn't a big mystery. Do you feel the gravity here? Pun intended. No solutions. Now, you go ahead and put the mud-filled cognitive dissonance glasses of the paradigm, of the Baller's paradigm on, and look up in the damn sky. Are there two or more masses up there? Yeah. But you can't use Einstein's field equations for any of that. Unbelievable. From their alma mater wiki, as the field equations are non-linear, they cannot always be completely solved. That is, without making approximations. For example, there is no known complete solution for a space-time with two massive bodies in it. There it is, right there. This is a joke. Alice in Wonderland has more veracity than this. And you see that non-linear phrase up yonder? That means the law of superposition does not hold. That is, you can't arbitrarily add additional masses to any of Einstein's field equations. You can't do it. Therefore, Einstein's field equations describe a universe with only one mass, or a completely empty freaking universe. I'm serious. Do you guys get this? P.S. Just like there are no married bachelors, there are no scientific theory equations. For goodness sakes. And another tiny little problem from the University of Warwick. That's up in your neck of the woods, Nathan. The problem is that the equations, that is Einstein's field equations, we require the energy and momentum to be defined precisely at every space-time point, which contradicts the uncertainty principle for quantum states. This is not just a problem at high energies or short distances. It is a conceptual incompatibility that applies in every lab. This is ridiculous, folks. Everyone knows it. It contradicts the uncertainty principle. Are you kidding me? Yeah, but they get people, Einstein's gravity, general relativity. Why? I don't get it. I don't. Would somebody explain this to me? Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
Cool. Excellent. As ever. Oh, got a lot of feedback. Before we open the mics on the Discord server, anybody in BALLBUSTERS got any comments?
Not me. That says it all.
Excellent presentation, by the way.
Yeah, good stuff, John.
Thanks. I got to clean my screen.
That's so. Okay, well, if there's nothing to add from anybody on the BALLBUSTERS side, we've got quite a few people in Discord. So, starting from the top, D, hello, can you hear us? Gleam's come
Is
off
that demo
mute.
call me?
Hello, Gleam, how you doing?
Hiya, you good?
Very well.
I should turn that down, shouldn't I?
Anything to add? Any comments?
Yeah. I was going to add, in as much as I see the citation that QE's doing, but basically gravity has already been debunked and peer reviewed to be debunked by science itself. Basically, if you pick three realms of science, one being the micro world, one being the macro world, and the other being the cosmic, then gravity only works just within the solar system in the macro world. It doesn't work down in the micro world and in the cosmic world with the galaxy rotation curve problem. It doesn't work up there either. So they've already proved their own model wrong about gravity. There is not currently a theory now at the moment that is correct for gravity. And all laws of science, I'm sure you all know, need to be scale invariant. So they work in all three realms, no matter how big, no matter how small.
Yeah, well
Comprende?
said.
It was more of a comment to add rather than any conflict with what was said. I did follow it all, and everything seemed legit in what has gone on in science, where they've changed the concept, and that's still not worked. So it's more they know themselves that their own model's wrong of gravity.
Right.
And it was just to basically reiterate that point, hit home.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Gleam.
If I may add something,
go
aren't
ahead.
there also outsider scientists that are deemed pseudoscientists, maybe, that are trying to explain the entire universe in the micro and macro and the normal cosmos level, as it were, that they're explaining it through electricity in the electric universe? Isn't that kind of getting momentum as gravity is fading away?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, Owen. There's a physicist who's actually a famous CERN physicist. He was a team member of the bubble chambers. He actually come up with all the analysis for how you analyze the actual bubble chamber. And he has actually done a paper, albeit he didn't actually publish it. It was one of his private works. He put it up on a standard document store site. But it's called Galactic Charge. If you look up for it, it was probably 2015, I think it was. And what he done is for dark matter, for the galaxy rotation curve issue, he used a pure voltage analogy, an electrostatic differential analogy. And even though he put a caveat right at the end saying, I do not support any electric universe theory, no one come at me, because he is an actual, obviously, in the mainstream. This is completely disconnected. It was just a thought experiment which just turned out to actually work. And it says right in his conclusion, please do not see this. This is just preliminary calculations. Please do not see this as any sort of evidence that dark matter is just voltage differential. And you can look that up. Or I can even post it in the Discord.
Yeah, that's handy. Always good to have your citations. Cool. Iron, is it? Anything to add? We've got about 15 minutes left of this interaction, public interaction, that is. Can you hear us, Iron? If not...
Nothing at the moment, Nathan.
No, fair enough. Unicorn laser eyes? Anything to add? No, maybe not. Zanik, I know you've got something to add.
Blame it on the rain. Yeah, yeah.
Danik, anything to add? Not. We'll move on. Is it Zuni? Saying your name right? Probably wrong.
Zeus
N5?
5, isn't it? It's like Zeus.
N5, can you hear us?
Yeah, he's new on Discord. I think he had problems with sound and stuff, so maybe that's the problem.
Fair enough. In that case, I'm more than happy to just chit-chat for the last 15 minutes of the live show, and then if people interrupt our chit-chat with objections about us talking about the reification of a conceptual medium that gets bent to bring rise to a force that's not a force but you can think of as a force, then maybe they'll interrupt. We'll see. Your mics are all open on Discord if you do want to join in the conversation. But yeah, excellent presentation, Quantum Eraser. Very well put together as ever. A few new bits in there I noticed, with the light of 2019 being quite useful quotes, shall we call them, from George Musa. Handy to have in your presentation.
Yes,
Nice.
sir.
Oh
It's
no,
game
not
over,
at all.
man. Game over.
Well, I was thinking more of, oh no, not at all, when asserting that they have no cause for gravity. Yeah, no scientific evidence of gravity is a housekeeping question for a reason. Any scientific evidence of gravity, George Musa? Oh no, not at all.
Yeah, you just sit back and laugh. Yep, just like that. That's a good laugh. Can you do that again?
Yeah, I'm still laughing. I love the George Musa quotes. They'll never get old because they're great. 10th Man, you know, I hope he doesn't hate me for saying this. You know, sometimes his delivery will fall a bit short, but it doesn't matter what he says. If it's a George Musa quote, it'll definitely get a laugh.
Yeah. He's really good with it, man. Sometimes I forget about it. He'll just spring it on you. I'll tell you what, 10th man, 11th man, he's pretty deep.
He's getting there. I was talking to, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Ranty, and he was saying, you know, everyone's got their favourites in terms of who they're following. And I was talking to him about 10th Man. He was like, oh, you know, I don't pay as much attention maybe to 10th Man as I do to Sleeping Warrior. And I'm like, well, okay, this is what I get out of watching 10th Man on the show. If you've watched his progress, because the guy's a very humble guy. He's like a really sweet guy. He's a farmer, and from the beginning of the show where he's kind of not said much, then he pipes up here and there, asks a few questions, then he started challenging people. Now he's a full-on debating flat earth ninja. You know, he's great. So, you know, if you're not watching flat earth debate, there's actually going to go, one of the shows will go out in about 10 minutes on Nathan Oakley 1980. You might as well plug my show as I'm on yours, eh? So,
Shamelessly.
Be there or be
here.
sphere.
Be here. Nathan Oakley 1980. Be here or be sphere. Anyway. This show will continue though, so if you are watching this on the re-up, which will go out also on Nathan Oakley 1980, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. This live show is not going to end immediately anyway. We may, as I say, get some audience participation. Typically, the second I press that stop button, everybody on Discord can't shut themselves up. But we're live, so
Yeah.
10 minutes of calm. Yeah. God, I must have something to say about this. Typically, this is a subject that just gets everyone in knots, or maybe up until 6 months ago, everyone got up in knots about it. Now it's like crystal clear. The conversations get really snappy now when it comes to gravity. You can kind of debunk any assertion that comes your way within about 4 or 5 sentences. I was hoping that would be the case on this live stream, but we might not be so privileged. The ballers aren't feeling in the mood, maybe.
Oh, Chris Berry in the chat is asking kind of an interesting question.
Feel free to repeat it.
All right, so he asks, what is your opinion on what actually governs motion, if it's not Newtonian or Einsteinian gravity?
It says motion. Does he mean the energy that I might put into something to make it move?
Bad echo, man.
I think that's you,
Yes.
Arwin. Just turn
I
down
think
the speakers
so.
a little bit, Arwin, if you would.
Oh.
Yeah, what does he mean? I'll have to clarify. If he says
Which
motion,
mode?
does he mean the energy I put into something to make it move?
I misinterpreted the question earlier, so I gave answer to another question. But when I read it out loud, I finally read it right. Goody. But I think what he probably is aiming at, where does the motion come in, and it's relative density disequilibrium. And whatever guides that, I don't know.
Well, you just have to break down those 3 words. the density and what it's in, the relative density, and then the disequilibrium thereof. In other words, if you don't have any of those factors, you're not going to have any movement. So you've got to put the thing into disequilibrium in the first instance for it to return from whence it came. Well, there's two things involved in that, isn't there? You pushing it into disequilibrium would be the most critical, because that's the bit that gets ignored by the globe heads. Well, I dropped this brick. Hold on. Why is it in your hand? You walking around with bricks at the end of your fingertips all day? No. You've had to pick it up. You've taken it out of equilibrium. So, yeah, I love those three words, Arwin. I've said this a couple of times now, but I mean it sincerely. So, without mentioning he who should not be named, Spurs chemo, we've had a lot of debate about nonsense that hasn't got us anywhere. Whereas Arwin and Sleeping Warrior debated this subject for a fair old stint, and it was great. You know, I'd taken Arwin's position prior to that particular discussion. At the time, I was definitely on Sleeping Warrior's side, but could definitely relate to Arwin's position on it. And at the end, you end up with those three beautiful words: relative density disequilibrium. Marvellous.
But how does it continue to accelerate? That's
Yes.
that's the big question.
Continue to accelerate. Well, what do you mean?
How does it continue to accelerate? It doesn't just go back to its spot. It goes back to its spot in grand glory of
Yeah, it
acceleration.
does. You're saying if I pick up a brick and drop it, it won't go back to where it came from?
It's not like you have some like return switch and it just kind of that goes back to this original spot. It actually
It
comes
does.
back with an
Well,
acceleration.
as
which is
as
part of
long
the
as
force.
it is
You don't want
Why
to break
does it
a
start
law of nature.
accelerating?
Hold on.
Accelerating in
Hold
the
on. I
first
want to hear.
place?
Hold on. I want to hear the end of what Zanik's asking. Go ahead again, Zanik.
So you don't want to break a major, agreed, and observable law of nature that all things that accelerate require a force. So if you, I agree with you. You lift something up, you're pulling it out of equilibrium. You can think of it that way. You start storing energy in that object because now it's farther away from where you moved it. You let go, and suddenly it starts to accelerate. Yes, the cause could be you letting go of it, but once it's in the air and you're not touching it any longer, why does it continue to accelerate? Any
Did you
acceleration
listen to this
requires a force.
I'm sorry. Did you listen to this presentation about your law?
That we all agree on because it is a law,
The
law of
Newton's
nature.
law that I just pummeled? How can
You
you
didn't
whistle
pummel
past
any
the
law.
graveyard? Blame it on the rain.
Tell me how. Huey,
Come
It's
on.
very
how do you
easily
pummel a
explained,
physical
though.
law?
Look, as long as
Give me
the
like
object
the one
is in
sentence overview of how you
disequilibrium with its
pummeled
environment, it will keep
nature
on
law of nature.
exerting that force, and that force naturally causes it to accelerate. So it will just keep on accelerating until the friction of the motion through the medium slows it down to maximum velocity, or until it's stopped within the motion by something else. That's just, it really
It's the
does
law.
work out.
Exactly. And we can call it drag is a type of friction, but yes, when that drag equals the force created by that force of due to gravity or whatever you want to call the force
No
down,
relative density
then yes, it'll stop-
disequilibrium. It
it'll
all
stop
depends on the
accelerating.
object within the medium.
I just said that.
Right.
So when
now
you're in
gravity
contact with the
then.
medium, you'll have drag being produced by that object, will it not?
Oh, right, hold on.
Right.
Okay, so, in terms of a brick that you've not interfered with, this is deja vu. Where are you going to get that from then? What's your vector, Victor? It's not ringing any bells.
We already gave Victor, we gave you that vector.
What's your
with the
clearance,
summit-
Clarence?
Yeah.
Roger. What's your
Just ask
vector?
my question
Victor?
again. So, what about
Vector,
the
Victor.
brick? What about the brick?
Daryl, down.
What
down,
about
Daryl.
what about the brick that you're yet to pick up? Where are you getting a vector from
So it
then?
has a vector, Victor.
What is its vector?
Daryl, we talked about this. It's down.
Oh, no gravity.
Daryl.
No gravity. What are you talking about? This down thing then?
One of the biggest confusions a lot of first year physics students
So
have.
what
is
down?
interchange
You
force
whistle
with
past it. I'll
acceleration.
just keep repeating it. So what down then?
There's a force vector and magnitude.
Is he deaf? What vector?
Yeah,
no
he is.
vector.
I'm pretty sure
Then he
he is,
says there's a
because
force vector. Now I'm getting bloody rumpused by Arwin when I make the point that he immediately references a vector, but he hasn't
Yes.
got one.
Yes, it does. Down.
No, it doesn't. It's not moving a smegging inch because you haven't interfered with it, have you, Fundy?
Let me finish. So people usually confuse acceleration with force, right? And so that is the difference here. We're talking about a force without an acceleration. And that seems like contradictory to the law. It's not when you have an opposing force of equal vector, and magnitude. That's called zero net force.
You know,
What
you
law is
say
that,
when there's
by the way?
nothing. Sorry, go
That
on.
is law of Newton. That's basically the
goody.
first or the
Newton's
third
law,
law.
you mean the ones that I just debunked over the
I
past
didn't
hour and a half?
Prove that law is only negated when it can be disproven. Show me what in nature where you can disprove
No,
that.
you gotta prove them first.
Give me your scientific method. Show me something
Blame
that
it on the
moves and accelerates without a force.
Yeah,
Show me.
yeah.
I'll wait. Here we go.
Right,
Yeah, it's the
need
force that's in
Scientific
contention.
Hold on.
Dependent
A
variable.
brick
Yeah, let's
laying on the ground
do
still
QE way.
is not in
Let's do this the
equilibrium.
QE way.
It's
Let's do
not
this the QE
resting
way.
within a
Okay, what's
medium
the
of
dependent
equal
variable?
density. It's still
There's
sitting
the
in air.
variable. Yep.
It's being stopped by something. So there's still some force going there because it's not in equilibrium yet. Has to be floating into something that has an equal density in order for that to stop. Okay.
That's not true at all whatsoever. You just made a completely incorrect statement. When I
There is
have a lead ball sitting on
No,
a
I
table, there's a differential density, but the lead ball doesn't go through the table.
that structure.
Oh, now we have another term called structure. Please define structure.
The structure is not the density. It's comparison of a cubic unit of volume. That's density. So you have to have an equal amount. You can support a brick with a net. You can support a brick with a net.
Wrong answer. Next up, evening there.
Hear the whole answer.
You're
just
going
rumpusted.
crazy. That's the standard orders.
Surface
orders
tension
of
can stop
magnitude.
Hold on,
something as
don't
well
also
in the
rumpus him.
conditions.
You can't make up shit on the fly here with me, all right?
That isn't.
You're
Look up
rumpusing
the
him.
orders of magnitude of
He doesn't
density.
stand for
They're
it, and I
real.
don't stand for it, all right? You can't just make up the structure.
Didn't
That's
hear
why it
him.
doesn't move.
Right, let's. He's not listening to me. I'm not going to let this happen in the last 2 minutes of the show. Do you want to repeat what you said, Gleam? I've muted Zanuck so he can't disrupt every word you say by going.
Yes, definitely. The structure part is a cannonball can be caught in a net. Now, obviously, the density of cotton versus the density of the cannonball material is completely different. When you're talking density and comparing the medium versus the actual object, it's Archimedes' principle, which is the basis of that will determine wherever you took it out of rest will be the direct vector, and you lifting it out of equilibrium will cause it to have a gravitational potential energy, which is the correct wording for it. It's that gravitational. Is that a natural buoyancy thing? Is that an electrostatic field thing? Or is that a gravity thing? There's only two of them that are tangible. The gravity is the intangible, unknown, unproven stuff.
What makes the electrostatic field more tangible than the gravitational field?
I see it as electrostatics is involved all along the way from the formulation of matter itself, elements and whatnot with the chemical bond, right the way through to your interaction to actually pick that brick up. I just posted it up in Discord a couple of minutes ago. If I could explain the whole process without even mentioning the word gravity and just using Newton's laws and a couple of principles which are common in physics. So Newton's first, a brick on the floor will stay on that floor until you apply an energy to pick it up. Picking it up requires this energy input, which is stored as the potential in the net system. You, brick, floor, air. Okay, so you actually gripping onto it, you must overcome its own weight, its own mass, and lift it proportionally. And the more you lift it away, the more gravitational potential it'll have. You can hold it there for as long as you want, but it will still have that same gravitational potential energy. So then as soon as you let go, you release that gravitational potential energy and it returns to Earth, to its rest point, where it is naturally at rest.
And with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. First and foremost, though, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to Paula, Betty, Chocolate Sane, Arwin, and of course Quantum Eraser for making this Ballbusters possible. And again, a massive thank you to all of the Discord server for making the interactive part of this live show possible. Be sure to smash the PayPal link in the info box below this video if you'd like to support this channel. As I say, stay tuned if you're watching on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley. Another huge, massive thank you to all of the Ballbusters team, and I will see you all in the next Ballbusters.
Thank you.